In September this year, I visited a curator of European paintings, Walter Liedtke, at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. He was preparing his exhibition on the Milkmaid by Vermeer, which he borrowed from the Rijksmuseum. And well, at the Boijmans Van Beuningen Museum, we are for many years studying our collections of paintings, looking at the artifacts which are there, and look for the relationship between the objects themselves, which we also have in our museum. And this project now, next year, is going to be launched on a website, and the project is called ALMA, and it basically stands for images of paintings and engravings linked to artifacts, so art meets artifacts. My first question to Walter Liedtke at the Metropolitan Museum was if he ever worked before with the relationship between material objects and the paintings of Johannes Vermeer.
Yes, we did. It was really important in the Vermeer and the Delft School exhibition. Yeah. Of course, there the objects were luxury goods, but frequently that was not even known, that the objects that appear in a painting by Vermeer, especially the woman with the water pitcher, exactly. The average American would assume that the basin and pitcher is simply brass, and it's important to make it clear that it's silver gilt, solid silver, and quite luxurious. Yes. In the case of the Milkmaid, what she's doing and what the objects are very much affects the interpretation of the work. Yes. And as you know, it's said that she's been making what we call bread porridge. It's not so easy, and you know, we depend on specialists such as yourself and the Boijmans Museum to know what's going on. The copper pail on the wall, for example, has been described as something you would receive milk in at your door from a milkmeisje. Yeah. And this really isn't true. We see in paintings by Nicholas Maas and others that generally milk is received in a bowl like that, which is a kind of cooking pot, or in English, yes. Pipkin. The copper pail is, of course, a market pail, and the long handle, it's an unusual type. It's a bit small. It's more, perhaps, exquisite, finer than the average one. But the long handle suggests that it's really for collecting fish or fowl or something like that.
Other 17th century paintings with women carrying the pails on their arms and
there's
collecting fish.
A rather nice American article of 1998 that describes what the maid is doing, but it's not completely accurate. And the writer imagines, for example, that the foot warmer is actually heating the room to some extent, and you know, this is implausible. Yes. You need to either have one at home, like I do, just as a historical object, or you know, study the pictures or know the actual thing. And it's really marvelous in museums when we can see these objects and realize what the artist has done to them, how he's using them, whether the use is actually simply everyday usage, or there is something special about it, that you know, he's making some point of iconography. So
yes, and it's also,
so it's quite important, and it's becoming more important too. I think, you know, maybe 40% of what I read at a guess is social history, and a lot of that is the material culture.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and it is also interesting to see again how, in very much realistic detail, Vermeer depicted the objects that he did. So so much detail that we can even say in which ceramic production center this pot was produced, in Oosterhout, for example.
Right. And of course the German jug, the Westerwald jug, and it was not so easy to get one which looks just like the Vermeer because
With the small rosette.
it's a finer example. It's got these very small white decorations and intense blue cobalt glaze. Of course, the description of objects precisely would have been part of the appeal to the original patron, and we now tend to take it for granted after the 19th century. And to some extent, I think we feel that you have realistic description or naturalism on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have style. And this is something that Vermeer would not understand himself. He has chosen a style of working here which is inspired by Leiden, and it's an option according to criticism at the time. And we know from his early work he could work in very different ways. And the patron would have appreciated the illusionistic description of these objects, and of course at the top end, fine materials like satin and silk and so on. But, you know, this right here on the tabletop is a kind of essay in different surfaces, reflections, textures, and so on, and is as much, well, we learn immediately Vermeer could have been one of the great still life painters of the 17th century if he wanted to go into that field.